Hello everybody and welcome back to Elite Dangerous Science. On today's episode, I'm going to talk about shields and Elite Dangerous. So first off, let's do a little quick reminder of how shields work in the game. So shields obviously have the role of deflecting shots, which allows you to not take damage directly to your hull during the time that your shields are up. The strength of your shield mainly depends on the size of your shield generator, the rating of your shield generator, and also the mass of your ship. Shields are not affected equally by different weapons in the game. For example, everybody knows that lasers are the ultimate shield destructors in the game. Kinetic or explosive weapons, on the other hand, like multi-cannons or missiles, are very bad against shields, and usually you wait until the shields of the ship is down before you start using that on your enemy. So the big question is, where does the shield tech come from in the first place? Interestingly enough, shields are not completely in the realm of science fiction. There are a few examples of real-life technology that resembles that. In my opinion, the technology that matches the closest what we see in the game is plasma shielding. Now, plasma shielding is basically creating a hot bubble of gas, ionized gas, around the vehicle that you want to protect. Boeing has worked on the idea for a while now, and even has patents for it. Boeing is mostly known for their airplanes and their involvement with the aerospace industry, but funny enough, this plasma shielding they worked on was actually designed for ground vehicles and military purposes. This type of shielding, however, was completely useless against projectiles. Instead, the purpose of it is to deflect the shockwave created from explosions nearby. This is pretty consistent with what we see in the game, since missiles and torpedoes and other explosives generally don't tend to do a lot of damage if the shields are up. However, the game does depict the fact that the shields are really good against deflecting kinetic weapons, such as multi-cannons, which is not the case for plasma shielding. The game also depicts shields as being vulnerable to thermal weapons such as lasers. Well, actually, plasma does a very good job at absorbing or deflecting electromagnetic radiation. This phenomenon is very well known and even occurs in our atmosphere with the ionosphere. This upper layer of the atmosphere is constantly bombarded by solar particles, which causes it to be ionized constantly. As the curvature of the Earth can often block the line of sight of a radar or a radio signal, it is often used to bounce off that signal in order to increase the range. Plasma stealth is also a technology that's been looked into since the Cold War. Depending on how you modulate the energy state of your plasma, it has the ability to absorb radar waves, which makes it pretty much invisible to radar. Since the lasers in the game should be CO2 lasers, emitting in the infrared spectrum in order to cut through metal, it is safe to assume that a well-modulated plasma can absorb this radiation. So in a nutshell, plasma shields would be very good against lasers. Or should I say, they would offer a very good protection against lasers. Now, the plasma itself would not do much against projectiles, since it's just basically a gas. Although we could assume that the strong electromagnetic field required to contain the plasma could also have an effect on projectiles if they were made in a magnetic sensitive material, like iron for example. The other problematics with respect to a plasma shield is it requires insane amount of energy to maintain. Now, this might not be a problem since our ships pretty much run on hydrogen fusion, but it's still important to note that would take a lot of energy, which is kind of actually reflected in the fact that shield generators in the game take up a lot of our energy output. In order to generate such a shield, you would need a gas to begin with in order to ionize it. The type of gas you use will affect the properties of your plasma. But since your ship runs on hydrogen anyways, it's pretty safe to assume that that's the gas you would go for to generate this plasma. The game mechanics associated with shields, such as your shields going down after they've taken too many hits, is mostly there for the gameplay. They would be either on or off, and they would be able to block 100% of the projectiles they're designed to block, and 0% of the projectiles they are not designed to block. Now, with this analysis, do keep in mind that most of this is still science fiction, meaning that none of that works in a practical way. Alternatives to plasma shielding would probably involve a device that has the ability to bend space and time. In the game, the technology is already there since we have supercruise or the frameshift drive in general that basically relies on bending space and time. The shield would be a very strong concentrated gravitational field with a repulsive force. This would result in a lensing effect, kind of like what we see with black holes and neutron stars in the game currently. And since that's not the case, I don't believe that's the kind of shielding that is used by ships. So once again, we can see that some of the features in the game can be directly or somewhat related to scientific phenomena that we know of, although some aspects are more there for the gameplay than anything, which is fine, which has its justification in my opinion. Also, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please comment if ever I've forgotten anything or if ever I've misled anybody with false information. Until next time, this is Commander V at your service.